Hi everyone, Meteorologist Brian Bennett. Here's your red tide update for Friday, September 21st. I'm going to quickly take a look at what the conditions are like right now and what we can expect in the coming days. Right now, northern Pinellas County has actually slightly improved compared to last Friday. So the Karenia brevis concentrations, not as bad around Anclote Key, Honeymoon Island, and areas in that vicinity, which is great news. Southern Pinellas County, Manatee, and northern Sarasota, still pretty bad with high concentrations of Karenia brevis. Southern Sarasota, Charlotte, Lee, and Collier County, there's a really large, nasty, toxic bloom just offshore of your area beaches in that location, but a little bit of an easterly wind has actually helped to push the worst of the water out into the Gulf a little bit, but still dealing with red tide in your location, but again, not the worst of the nasty red tide water. That has been pushed offshore just a tad. All right, what's the forecast over the next week? Well, I'm expecting a very slight improvement along pretty much most beaches up and down the west coast of Florida, and that's due to offshore currents. Offshore currents will help to drag the surface blooms again farther out into the Gulf of Mexico instead of dragging those surface blooms onshore. So maybe a slight improvement. Red tide's not going to go away over the next week, but again, it could get a little bit better in a few locations. All right, better breathing too due to offshore winds. Winds for the next couple of days, for the most part, are going to be from the east to the west, and that'll help to take those toxins, the aerosols that can give us trouble breathing, especially if you have some respiratory illness. It's going to help to take a lot of that stuff and just push it offshore. So better breathing right along the beaches, even for folks that are perhaps a mile inland. You might be smelling the dead fish and being impacted by the red tide toxins as well. But again, with an easterly wind, that's going to help you out too. No dramatic increase in beach fish kill for any southwest Florida counties expected over the next week. Now, if you remember, 2 weeks ago, Pinellas County went from having beautiful, pristine beaches and no dead fish to bam, the dead fish just washed ashore, the water turned brown, and a lot of that was due to a westerly wind bringing all that mess ashore. Well, there's nothing like that that's going to happen over the next week, so that's some good news that basically conditions will not be getting worse for any places along the west coast of Florida. All right, here's the latest sampling from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation, and you can see again that northern Pinellas County generally in the very low to low range. And then once you get right around Indian Rocks Beach, that's where we start to see it increase a little bit and become medium. And then southern Pinellas County down through Egmont Key, parts of the Skyway, Manatee, and northern Sarasota County. That's where we're seeing the high concentration still of Karenia brevis. And you'll notice a few little white dots here in southern Sarasota County and Charlotte and Lee, right along the area beaches. That's because some of the most nasty water has actually been pushed offshore a little bit due to an easterly wind. So pretty toxic bloom offshore, but a few spots actually showing some marginal improvement in some of these southern counties, especially locations like Lee County that have been dealing with this for 11 months now. So I'm sure any improvement would be greatly appreciated at this point. Here's the latest satellite image, and it kind of tells the same story here. The dark brown murky water here is visible from space. This is all red tide here. And one thing you'll notice, though, as you head farther north, that brownish color starts to fade away a little bit. And that's, again, why we're seeing conditions in northern Pinellas County not being quite as bad. Southern Pinellas County might even have had just a bit of an improvement as well, but still getting pretty dark and murky pretty close to the coast, especially as you start to head south. And again, here's that large toxic bloom that's offshore of Sanibel Island. Not a big shocker there, since this is near the mouth of the Caloosahatchee River, which is dumping the nutrients out of Lake Okeechobee. But I guess the good news here is that the easterly winds have actually pushed some of this offshore so that some spotty beaches are actually seeing a slight improvement in areas to the south. All right, there's me quickly highlighting where the red tide still does exist right now. Although it has improved in northern Pinellas County, it still technically does exist. The red color that I've highlighted there is where the higher concentrations are right now. All right, let's look at the Gulf currents real quick. And the Gulf currents are important because it shows you the direction that the surface bloom will drift over the coming days. Also, onshore currents are a really bad thing. It brings dead fish ashore and higher concentrations of Karenia brevis to the area beaches. And that's again what happened to Pinellas County 2 weeks ago when we saw the winds shift westerly and bring that nasty water and the fish kill ashore. All right, as we move into your Saturday, actually relatively good. We're going to have offshore winds. That means winds from the east to the west. So good ocean currents in our favor on Saturday. Moving into Sunday, looking okay. There will be a bit of a southerly component to the ocean currents, which could help to drag some of the concentrations north a little bit, but it's going to be dragging it to the west-northwest, so keeping it off the area beaches. Monday looking good with an offshore wind. Tuesday looks okay, similar scenario as 2 days ago. Wednesday looking okay as well with generally a northwest movement to any surface currents. Thursday looking okay as well, although there's a bit more of a southerly component to the wind, which could drag the surface currents north a tad. But again, staying offshore. That's one of the main factors there, and staying offshore again on Friday. So really, over the next 7 days, we're looking pretty good with our ocean currents, that we're not going to be dragging any huge amounts of dead fish or huge amounts of higher concentrations of Karenia brevis toward the area shores. All right, wind direction. Wind direction can actually differ a little bit from what's going on with the ocean or the Gulf currents. That's because you can get minute atmospheric changes due to, say, the Gulf sea breeze, where wind directions can change. You also have something called the Ekman fluid dynamics, which actually change the ocean currents or the Gulf currents a tad more than you would experience with a straight line wind. Anyway, with that said, onshore winds, they bring brevetoxin aerosols on shore. They're horrible. They lead to breathing difficulties. Also, airborne toxins in high enough concentrations to cause breathing problems and stench of dead fish can reach up to 1 mile inland on an onshore wind. So bottom line from this graphic, onshore winds bad, offshore winds are good. All right, so Saturday, we're looking at good conditions with winds blowing east to west, and that'll take those airborne toxins and wash them right out into the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, where there aren't really any humans to be impacted by that. So good conditions relative to what we've been experiencing on your Saturday. Sunday, pretty good. For the most part, we'll have an offshore wind, but there may be a time period where we can see a real light onshore wind for maybe an hour or two. Monday is looking good with strong offshore winds, so I don't think the Gulf sea breeze will make it onshore at all on Monday, so pretty good breathing conditions on your Monday. Tuesday looks okay as well. Very light onshore winds during the middle of the afternoon could very briefly bring some of those aerosols on shore, but still looking pretty good. Wednesday looking okay as well. Only very light onshore winds at best. On Thursday, we're looking good with pretty strong offshore winds. And Friday is looking good as well with those offshore winds taking those airborne toxins and blowing them right out into the Gulf and away from land. So the bottom line is we're still in the midst of this horrible, near record-breaking red tide event. It's lasted for a long time. It's been around for 11 months, and it's not going to disappear over the next week, unfortunately. Though, caveat or condition here, conditions not expected to get worse over the next 7 days. So we might actually see a slight improvement over the next 7 days. And those offshore winds are the primary reason why it's going to be pushing the nasty stuff out into the Gulf instead of pushing it onshore. Although I did want to mention, though, Pinellas County, as you know, over the last 2 weeks, has been joining the red tide event here. So lots of dead fish washing up on area beaches. Some of those dead fish are going to kind of be working their ways back into some of the channels and canals that might not have experienced them yet. So just know that you could be seeing some of that going on. I saw that happen in Sarasota County when this event first started. So that could happen in Pinellas County as well. All right, stay tuned though. I'm going to be making a couple of videos here soon. One, I'm going to talk about the impact a hurricane could have. Could a hurricane potentially knock red tide out in a matter of days? Completely a possibility. That does come with caveats, and also that hurricane has to be in a very particular position for it to improve and actually not make the red tide worse. So I'm going to make a little video on that in case you're interested. I'm going to make another video on when all this is going to go away, because obviously we want our beach is back on all of the west coast of Florida. I'm going to take a look at the history of past red tide events and take a look at the forecast to try to give you the best idea of when the conditions will be dramatically improving. And I'll continue to give you the satellite updates, which really kind of tell the story as well. All right, folks, that's it for now. That's a quick update about what's going on and what to expect over the next 7 days. Hope you have a great and safe weekend, and thank you for watching.